Hey, it's Ann from Ann Moyer Singing, and somebody on YouTube asked a very good question. And I kind of take it for granted because I've been doing it that people understand that bel canto is something that's different from what most people do as singing. And that's not something that I guess is obvious on the surface. So let me talk a little bit about the process and why bel canto is different. So, how do most people start singing? Well, most people start singing by taking their speaking voice and they put melody into it and begin to extend the words. It uses the exact same mechanisms that we use to speak because it's the same technique. It's generally referred to as chest voice. The vibration all sits in your throat and rib cage, and after a while of use, it doesn't work as well. You get hoarse. It has limits on range before it sounds strained. Going up for pitch, for guys especially, the larynx gets tight and SpongeBob starts to creep into the sound. Traditional singing teachers will talk about falsetto and head voice and mixes and stuff. And these are all ways of managing the mechanics of how the larynx needs to operate at different ranges of pitch. For instance, if you start in the middle range of your voice, and you go up, there's a point at which your voice is going to crack. And that crack is called a passaggio. And just to simply say, that's a point at which, unless your vocal folds have to change how they're operating to continue to make sound. And if you're a girl, you go into head voice. And if you're a guy, you go into falsetto. But we don't want to get too deep into that. So each of these ranges are dealt with in a slightly different mechanic. And in the cases of mixes, it brings in some head voice and brings in some chest voices and using different ratios to combine them. And each of the techniques makes the tone the singer generates change too as the method changes. So the instrument, you, can have different tonal qualities depending upon how you manipulate it. And that's really kind of what bel canto takes advantage of. Bel canto uses physics. And it takes advantage of the fact that we can control where that vibration ends up, and that we move it out of the throat and we move it up into the sinuses. Now, if you take like a whiny kid voice, like, I know, I don't like it, and make the vowel sounds E, ah, O. If you make those E, ah, O, you'll feel a vibration somewhere up in your face. And each vowel will feel like it's in a slightly different spot. That vibration point is called placement. And so the secret is learning to place that vibration in a very specific spot that everybody has in their skull. And when you find that spot, it rings your skull literally like a bell and turns it into a megaphone. And you get an amazing amount of sound. Now, we find the optimal spot and we stick to it. So we'll start in falsetto. So I'll go up, I'm going to be in this squeaky voice because it's a boy and I started life as a guy. And we take the space and we teach you how to open up the sinuses. So it becomes, oh, and that it's possible for most guys to gain an octave of range for learning this method just from purely converting the falsetto. But once we have that upper voice dialed in and sounding loud due to the way that we're using our skull, we then learn how to bring that pitch down while still keeping the voice and the resonance all up in this space. And that's the thing that makes it different. So as we descend in traditional methods, we'd go head voice down into mix, down into chest voice. And bel canto doesn't do that. No change in placement, no change in tonal quality. In reality, bel canto is kind of a giant mix. The tonality, it doesn't change from top to bottom. My personal range is like D2 to D5 on a good day, and I'm not special. That's just the method. So for part of another example of how this all works, find a baby in your family, small as you can find, and they're likely at some point going to be having a bad day. Now, when they're having a bad day, that little nugget of joy can put out 90 plus decibels of sound all day long. They don't get tired, and you hear it across the entire house, even through closed doors. Well, watch that baby. The abdomen's all inflated. The whole band of muscles, the rectus abdominis bands all the way down, is all engaged. And so all this tension is being generated in the abs underneath the diaphragm. Sinuses are all expanded. The voice is all up in the sinus space. Nostrils flared, tongues flat and extended. And that baby is using the stuff that we're going to go back to, that we unlearned when we learned language. And bel canto recaptures that mechanic. So bel canto uses something called squillo. Remember that baby we were just talking about? They generate a sound at 3,500 hertz. The human ear canal is optimized to hear it even at great distances. It's evolutionary advantage. We need to hear our babies. Bel canto, because we're using this head resonant space, generates a band of sound from about 2,800 hertz to about 4,000 hertz and above, depending upon the singer. And it uses this predisposition for 3,500 hertz and makes it so the singer is heard over the accompaniment. I regularly use this in places that have got 600 seats and more without any amplification at all, and everybody can hear me just fine. Again, I'm not special, it's the method. So how long does it take to learn this? It takes a few months to learn the basics of how it operates, but this is very much a learned dexterity thing. Think of it like martial arts or gymnastics. It's all very physical. There's a lot of very specific body action going on. We have to teach the student how to breathe using the abs instead of the ribs. We're asking you to actively manipulate the sinuses in ways that you usually only do when you sneeze or yawn or do semi-voluntary things. We have to get you out of some tongue and mouth habits that you don't even know you have, that are contributing to your sound, maybe sounding whiny or hollow, or, there's all kinds of things, just tiny little manipulations and changes, and linguistic tics, because everybody, the language that you learned when you unbabied and became a person also says something about the linguistic tics that you have, and those will also affect the sound of your voice too. So it can take years to get everything down so that it's instinctive. My teacher told me at the beginning it takes 5 to 7 years to get good. I can get you using the method successfully on usually a class or two. But this takes work. This takes regular practice. And but for doing it, it's the Dodge truck frame of singing. Once you learn how to do it, you can apply it to anything. Absolutely anything. I've got students using this for doing metal. Floor Jansen from Nightwish, for crying out loud, or your Slipknot, and there's a whole bunch of other places that these people are using the music in ways that I never would have thought. And my teacher just shakes his head when he hears the stuff that this is getting used for. Rap, R&B, folk's a no-brainer. Musical theater is really the sweet spot. That's really what I thought I'd be getting into when I was teaching people. But I'll teach anybody, and this method really can be learned by anybody. So anyhow, I hope that answers your question, and I'll see you guys online. Peace.